where at the board level, the conflicts that happen because of operational requirements.
कभी कोई ऐसा इंसिडेंट है जो दिमाग में आता है आपके?
मैं वही कह रहा हूँ. अभी जैसे for example, I am the chief operating officer. Now what happens is that at the chief operating officer level, I am accountable to the board because the board is going to ask me, Chandra Kumar, why is the daily rate so high? Why is the utilization so low? Whatever. I mean, these are operational, KRAs. Let's what we call the KRAs, right? In management. So I'm responsible for those KRAs, delivering those KRAs. So the board has got a right to ask me, why is, on quarter and quarter, why is this not happening? So now I have to give an answer to the board. One is, why is it happening? And when will it get corrected? Merely by saying that I know why it is happening, the board also knows why it's happening. You're there to ensure that things are set right.
Correct.
So then you have to say, okay, I'll say it. Now the question is, I need resources. Now I need resources. Now that is where the board has to agree to the resources. For the resources, unless I'm able to convince the board that I need the resources, things are not going to work out. So it's not confrontationist. It's collaborative. I mean, we are working. That's why I said, ultimately, everybody is working toward the same goal.
नहीं सर, कोई ऐसा इंसिडेंट आपके दिमाग में आता है?
हाँ, मेरे इंसिडेंट में बड़ा अजीब ऐसा इंसिडेंट है. See, what happened is, Air India Express, now I'll come to Air India Express. Air India Express, when I took over, I took over on 10th of February 2011. What happened was that there was an accident. Mangalore में accident हुआ था on 22nd May 2010. Unfortunately, the Dubai-Mangalore flight crashed.
Okay.
And almost, nearly 160 fatalities or something. I don't remember the exact number, but I think there were only probably 8 to 10 survivors. So there was this thing. And there was a court of inquiry which went into the entire accident process and all that. And once the court of inquiry recommendations came, the government realized that there were a lot of operational issues in Air India Express, primarily because it was a subsidiary of Air India. Air India Express was a company. Air India was the holding company. So
parent company
and subsidiary company. So what used to happen was almost all the managing decisions, the operational decisions being taken by the parent company officials without any relevance without probably not being in touch with the ground level realities. There's a lot of other problems. So they said this is not a very healthy thing. And by then they had 22 aircraft. One, of course. So there were 21 aircraft and 22 aircraft. So the government's problem is that now how do you, if things are allowed to run like this, there'll be another crash. That was for sure. Because the systems were not being followed. I mean, a lot of changes. Now can you shut down an airline? You can't. So how do you do restructuring? Now for restructuring, you need people with I would not say danda, but certainly a different approach. Dande ki bhi zarurat padta hai, but more than that, you need a different perspective. So what happened was there was a search committee and they picked up some Captain Powner from outside, and he was a pilot. He was an ex-Air Force wing commander, and then he was a pilot with Jet Airways, and he was chosen as the chief operating officer. Now, the day his name was appointed, all hell broke loose. Pura company, this thing, because he was appointed on a salary of 1.2 crores annually.
और वो भी वो टाइम पे.
वो टाइम पे. So anyway, I'm not questioning the decision. That was the board. It was the board acceptance. That he's worth that much. But you know how people are.
Correct.
Hey, company is running losses and this and all that. So from day one there was this animosity towards him from everybody, within, outside, inside. See, now there was a background to this thing. So what happened was there was a DGCA committee in 2009. In fact, July 2009, there was a DGCA committee on air traffic. I mean, basically to look at it, how the air traffic will grow and some statistical models and all that. And that is also the think tank of this thing. So I was one of the members of that. And while I was there, during that time, I had come up with a couple of suggestions, which was appreciated because the Director General Civil Aviation later on became the Secretary of Civil Aviation.
Okay.
So he knew that I had some out-of-the-box thinking. Because one of the suggestions which I made at the very first meeting, I said, there's something called, we all talk of industrial GDP, each industry, how much it contributes. There was no separate measurement of aviation's contribution to GDP. It was being part of the normal tourism sector. I told him, I said, it's a lacuna. Because if you want funds, if the ministry wants funds, aviation ministry, unless you're able to quantify what is the exact thing, he said, point well taken. Then he asked the Indian Statistical Service, the director. They said, yeah, it's a fact. We are. So he said, what do we do? We need to change the, but getting a new measurement done in the government of India is a huge Herculean, because it calls for a lot of, anyway, whatever, they got it done. I mean, so we got, so he knew that I am somebody who's able to. And then there was some other things that came up. So what happened? So he, in fact, somewhere at the back of his mind, he had that feeling that, there is this person who probably would, to look at it. So I was asked whether I'm willing to go to Cochin as number 2 to Captain Arora, Pawan Arora, as a number 2. I said, fine. I said, I have no problem. I've handled enough of this thing. So this is number 2. I went as number 2 to him. And I still remember, I think I got a call on February 9th or something. I got a call from my chairman's office, and they said, Chandra Kumar, there's a message for you. I said, what is it? You're being asked to take over. Captain Pawan Arora is being relieved immediately. Orders are being issued. And drive down to Cochin and take over from him.
Wow. Great.
So that's how I took over this thing. And of course, much later, after I retired, somebody, one of the joint secretaries who was earlier in the ministry, he had then become this thing. So he met, बोला, Chandra कैसा रहा? ठीक? बोला, सर वैसे तो आपकी दुआ से सब ठीक ही रहा सब कुछ. ये हंसने लगा. बोला नहीं हमारी दुआ नहीं है. बोला आपके बारे में एक ही कहता कि संतरी और मंत्री के लिए आपके लिए बराबर है. आप जिस भी कुर्सी पे बैठते हो, आपके सामने जो भी आते हैं ना, आपको फर्क नहीं पड़ता है.
Impartial. Beautiful. तो कभी ऐसा कोई जब भी आप इतना सीनियर मोस्ट पोस्ट पे चले गए, तो कोई ऐसा डिसीजन लिया है आपने जो बाद में आपको उसका पछतावा हुआ आपको?
पछतावा हुआ इन द सेंस कि देखो क्या होता है कि जब सीनियर पोजीशन पे समटाइम्स आपको किसी को नौकरी से निकालना पड़ता है.
अच्छा.
देयर आर टाइम्स व्हेन
गवर्नमेंट जॉब में से भी नौकरी से निकालना
पड़ता है. ऑफ कोर्स, स्पेशली एंड इट्स वेरी
लाइक हार्डकोर नॉन परफॉर्मर.
No, hardcore non-performer, or if a safety this thing. I'm giving an example. If it's for example, in Air India Express, the first thing we did, because it was a pilot error. So the day from the day I took over this thing, like we had this thing. So we decided to have a proficiency, call all the people for a proficiency check. Something called a pilot's proficiency check, which is actually part of a standard mandatory thing. Now in Air India Express, there was a lot of opposition to that because people said we've been flying for 20 years or whatever it is. Why should we undergo a check and blah blah and all that. Anyway, those are all. It happens in all organizations. But I was very clear. I said, एक तो proficiency check लाना है. We need to do it. Second is there's something called flight safety department in every organization. Now, conventionally, in all organizations, the director of flight safety is a pilot. There's a convention. Most of the airlines follow that. Indian Airlines had a slightly different this thing. In our case, in the regions, the director of flight safety would be an engineer. At the headquarters, the director of flight safety would be a pilot.
Okay.
And the regions, it would be quite often, an engineer heading the flight safety, but with a pilot to assist. Not just one, maybe more than one pilot to assist. Because what does a flight safety do? Basically, they are looking at all the record, the digital flight recorder and all those things. So basically, after a flight is you're just analyzing the profile and seeing whether everything was, whether the inputs were right, the speeds were right, takeoff and all that. So if you find anything that is wrong in terms of this thing, then you're going to call them and counsel them. That's the way it should be. That's what flight safety is all about. So I said, let's have a flight safety. Let's change the process. Let's have a director of flight. Let's have the person heading flight safety from an engineering division, and assisted by a pilot. All hell broke loose. I stood my ground. I went and told the chairman. I said, sir, hum kya? I said, why are we here? We are here to. So we got this thing done. Now, in that process, we found that some of those pilots were not up to the mark. Found it. So there were a couple of instances wherein I had, wherein we had to say that this pilot, need not, the contract. Because, see, Air India Express was on contract basis. Air India Express was on contract. It's not a permanent thing. Every 3 renewable contracts, 5-year contracts.
मतलब आप जो बोल रहे हैं employees के लिए
everybody, सबके लिए वही था.
भले वो aerosters हो,
कोई भी हो, pilot हो, engineer, सबके लिए 5 years. So when this contract renewable के मैं बोला ऐसे उसे करिए मत करो, don't renew the contract.
हाँ, तो by default.
Yeah, by default. Of course, there was huge. वो तो ठीक है, people can write to anybody. But I was very clear. I said, based on his performance and all these things, we don't find him fit to renewable contract. Then there was another couple of similar instances. of course, when what happens is when you take these tough stances, people go against you because they think it's a personal thing. There's no personal agenda.
मैं उसी पे आ रहा था.
हाँ,
तो जब आप सामने वाले को बोलते हो मतलब कॉन्ट्रैक्ट रिन्यू नहीं करना है एंड पब्लिक वो आपके अगेंस्ट में दिमाग में रखेंगे.
हाँ, रखेंगे, वो तो रखेंगे.
तो ये सब चीजों पे आप कैसे हैंडल करते थे?
मैं बॉदर ही नहीं करता था.
कोई ऐसा इंसिडेंट याद आता है जब सामने वाला कभी आपसे कुछ बोल दिया और आपने उनको समझाया हो?
नहीं, एक्चुअली क्या था कि मुझे अभी भी याद है, दो यंग, क्योंकि इन फ्लाइंग में क्या होता है, देयर इज समथिंग पायलट्स की जो होता है ना, दे गॉट डिफरेंट ग्रेडेशन ऑफ पायलट्स. सो देयर इज समथिंग कॉल्ड ट्रेनिंग कैप्टन्स. नॉर्मल कैप्टन होते हैं, ट्रेनिंग कैप्टन होते हैं. अबाउट ट्रेनिंग कैप्टन दिस कॉल्ड टाइप रेटेड इंस्ट्रक्टर, TRI. Above TRI is something called type rated examiner. That's the highest category. That means they are the people who are going to examine people, you know. So we had two very bright, I mean, like, you know, in the sense bright, I mean, really bright people. I think they were in the 30s. I wouldn't name them. Now, all pilots are unionized. They were right. I mean, I'm no one to say whether you should be unionized or not unionized. But typically in a contractual employment, that unionization system doesn't really work. I mean, Air India was not, because Air India is the government. I mean, like, but in Air India Express में unionization का system नहीं था. So anyway, these people, a couple of them came and told me that, you know, so this thing and all that. And so they wanted somebody wanted change from one base to another base. Everybody, because we had a lot of people in Cochin and everybody wants to come back to Delhi, and too many people from Delhi were and all our flights are in the southern region. I mean, we were all, so they said, sir, we were promised when we were recruited that we will get out this thing. I said, see, management is a continuity. So if somebody has made a promise to you 3 years back, I can't say they did not make a promise. Maybe it was promised. Fine. And in all fairness, I should try to, you know, accept that somebody promised you. The question is, but how many people can go back to Delhi? So there has to be a system. And the system has to be very fair and transparent. So I said there are very well laid down procedures. So the person with the longest service in this base would get parity to go back. Okay. So one group of people accepted that. But the other group of people said, you know, that should not be the criteria, but I'm an examiner, I'm this thing, you know, there should be some special criteria for people, you know, with a higher level of... I said, listen, it doesn't really work that way. Because if you got a higher level of skill, you're also being paid, there's an extra allowances that you're getting. And it's a privilege to have that higher skill, isn't it? I mean, you're an examiner. And he said, you know, then I may choose to resign if that is the stand you're taking. I said, feel free. We are a free country. You are a democracy.
Wow.
I said, the President of India didn't come to recruit you, right? The President of India didn't come and ask you, please come. You applied, right? And then he took as a challenge, you know, I mean, 3 or 4, I mean, about 10 of them, they put in their resignations, thinking that I would not accept. So I told the HR, I said, accept all of them. And we accepted all of them. But then there was, like, you know, I mean, how do I say, everybody knows everybody, somebody knows everybody else, you know, like, that's how India. So then they said, you know, we never thought that the CEO is going to take it so seriously, you know, हम लोग अपने notice period में. I said, ठीक है, notice period पे तो क्या, notice accept कर लिया ना.
तो ये सब सिचुएशन में
but what happened, but anyway, but to cut a long story short, at the same time, later on when I met with the chairman told me, Chandra Kumar, at one level you're right, but some of them, you know, can we give a second chance to them? I said, sir, yes. If they write to, especially if they apologize for this thing, I will give a second chance, but they must apologize in writing, saying that, you know, it was a rash decision on their part, and, you know, after this thing, they want to withdraw that. I said, those who are willing to write that, they will accept it. But those who are not willing to write that, they will not. So I think 2 of them refused to. I mean, their ego was this thing, and they were thinking that political pressure will help them, you know, help this thing. That 8 लोगों को किया तो 10 लोगों को क्यों नहीं किया? मैंने कहा भाई ऐसा नहीं है. जब 8 लोग लिख सकते हैं, 10 लोग भी लिख सकते हैं.
Valid.
So if you ask me, should I have shown mercy? Maybe my wife later on when we were discussing, she said, why did you? बच्चे भी छोटे थे. मैं बोला तो हम सबके बच्चे छोटे होते हैं जब at some time सबके बच्चे छोटे होते हैं.
नहीं, लाइक यू नो, जो लेवल पे आप थे, वो लेवल पे सबका ईगो मेंटेन करके चलना विदाउट हर्टिंग, एंड एट द सेम टाइम यू ऑल्सो ओ योर डिसीजन टू द कंपनी फॉर द welfare of the company.
This is precisely what we were taught at a very young age. That in aviation there is no place for ego. Engineering teaches you this very well. Engineering department teaches you this one very.
सर्विस इंडस्ट्री है तो ईगो रख के क्या ही
मैंने बोला कोई इंजीनियरिंग डिपार्टमेंट से कि जितना वो टॉयलेट का जो क्लीनर है ना उसका भी उतना ही अहमियत है जितना इंजीनियरिंग AME1 है. AME1 का लाइसेंस AME हैज टू सर्टिफाई द एयरक्राफ्ट, लेकिन टॉयलेट अगर साफ नहीं हुआ ना आप एयरक्राफ्ट सर्टिफाई नहीं कर सकते.
हर किसी का अपना अपना महत्व होता है.
सो नोबडी शुड हैव एन ईगो हियर. बड़ा क्लियर है, एंड दैट इज द वे आई लुक्ड एट लाइफ.
तो ये सब जब भी आप बोलते ना, मैं ये नहीं बोलूँगा लेफ्ट राइट सेंटर डिसीजन ले रहे थे सही, लेकिन सही समय पे जो आपको सही लगा इन द इंटरेस्ट ऑफ द कंपनी आप जब डिसीजन ले रहे थे, तो आप पे कभी यूनियन या फिर पॉलिटिकल प्रेशर नहीं बनाए रखे?
पॉलिटिकल प्रेशर और यूनियन प्रेशर क्या होता है? सी पॉलिटिकल एंड यूनियन प्रेशर भी yes, this I'll tell you what happens is the union people will come and meet. I had an open house. मेरा बड़ा क्लियर था कि ओपन हाउस था. ओपन हाउस इन द सेंस दैट I was always shuttling between Bombay, Delhi and Cochin. और मैंने क्लियरली लोगों को बोला था कि whenever I'm in Cochin, you can walk into my office.
So you are accessible to anybody.
Completely accessible. And not only that, if I'm landing
and a person of your level, na?
I was very, very clear. I said very, very clear. You can always meet me. I will give you a patient hearing. But that does not mean that I'm going to take a decision in your favor.
Brilliant.
कल को ये मत बोलना कि साहब मैं CEO साहब से मिल के आ गया हूँ. जरूर CEO साहब ने मिल लिया, CEO ने सुन लिया.
मैंने सुना मतलब हामी भरने का जरूर नहीं. बरोबर है. करेक्ट. सो जब भी आप बोलते ना, ये मैं नहीं बोल रहा हूँ, बट देन एक जनरल परसेप्शन है कि सरकारी एयरलाइन है ये वो, जब सोशल मीडिया पे ज़रा सा बात का बतंगड़ बना देते हैं वो लोग, तो वो टाइम पे शायद सोशल मीडिया का उतना बोलते हैं ना प्रोमिनेंस नहीं रहा रहेगा, बट देन लोगों का एक परसेप्शन होता है, एक नज़रिया होता है, देखने का एक ओपिनियन होता है. तो वो टाइम पे जब सरकारी कोई भी गवर्नमेंट रन एयरलाइन ज़रा सा भी गलती होता था तो दे टेंड टू क्रिटिसाइज. तो वो टाइम पे आप, बिकॉज यू आर मोर और लेस द स्पोक्स पर्सन या फिर द फेस, तो हाउ डिड यू हैंडल दैट?
I'll explain to you. I'll give you a very good example. क्या था कि because our Indian Airlines का major competitor was Jet Airways. They were a major competitor, right?
प्राइवेट में तो वो लीडर
प्राइवेट में लीडर थे. They were leaders, and then they will, I mean, like, okay, now compared to the Jet Airways and Indian Airlines, when we looked at it, their aircraft were modern. I mean, like, I'm not saying we did not have modern. Our A320 was equally modern, but the way the brand was projected, the projection of the brand, I had a different projection of the brand. So, like, so, and they would say कि Jet Airways में, flights are more on time. Now, what happens is flight on time, it depends on the network. हमारा 4 bases है. We got 4 bases, 4 different. So our networks are different. So maybe our on-time performance was not this thing. But otherwise, in terms of service, I think Indian Airlines service was as good as Jet Airways. And people, especially in terms of our business class, J class, Indian Airlines was as good as Jet Airways. There's no doubt. And people used to accept. But in terms of media, what was happening was, as you rightly said, there's always this perception that Indian Airlines sarkari hai, so things will, it will not be that. There'll be something less. Because government, unfortunately, the average Indian tends to equate government with inefficiency. That's how, एक perception है कि सरकारी में कुछ नहीं होता है. It's not that. What happens is, सरकार में system है. There is a system in place in any सरकारी office. Even if you go to municipal department, municipality में भी जाओगे, वहाँ पे there's a system in place. The priest. And if the system is followed, and if everybody follows the system, things will work out very well. Deficiency नहीं आएगा. The problem comes when people don't follow the system. उसका भी again होता है. One is the training that you give to the people. The aviation being an industry where training is always part of it. Our training standards are much better. So the system will get followed. But despite that, media. See, now I'll tell you, because I've done my journalism, so I know why from the media's point of view, something that is bad news will makes this good news for the media.
Ironically,
yes. See, ironically, if there's an accident or something that is a mishap, it makes headline news.
अगला दिन का stop press करके headline बनना ही बनना.
And same with the channels, because it's all of course आज के दिन पे TRP has become a major issue, but even in those days, channels had to have viewership. So therefore, from the media's point of view, anything that was negative tend to get highlighted, tend to be highlighted. So I still remember when I was for a moment, for some time, and in fact, during the crash of this thing, I was in charge of the media. I mean, during the what do you call the crash, Air India Express crash I mentioned, I was heading the media division of Indian Airlines, or the combined Air India. I was heading the Copcom division, but it was called Copcom. So I had a lot of friends in the media. I told them in the media. I said, see, I have nothing against you people, but always also try to balance your story. Don't always look at only the negative aspect of it. There are certain positives also that happen. But in terms of ultimate coverage, आपको जो बुरा है वो याद आएगा. From even from a reader's perspective. रिकॉल जो है ना, रिकॉल वैल्यू जो है ना, हमेशा बुरे का ही ज़्यादा रिकॉल जल्दी आता है. अच्छा जो किया वो रिकॉल बाद में आएगा, शायद आएगा भी नहीं.
तो नहीं, तो आप जब भी आप मीडिया को हैंडल कर रहे थे, मीडिया इज़ जस्ट 50%. बाकी का 50%, सोचो फॉर एग्जांपल हम क्रैश का ही बात ले लेंगे, बाकी का जो 50% बचता है, यू बिकम रिस्पॉन्सिबल और पीपल होल्ड यू रिस्पॉन्सिबल. कौन लोग पता है, ये जो जिनके फैमिली मेंबर्स क्रैश में मरे, तो वो कितना टफ होता था आपको. एक तरफ में मीडिया आप पे प्रेशर है, सेकेंडली उन लोग के बोलते ना नजदीकी कोई किसी का देहांत हो गया, या फिर उनको पता भी नहीं है कि वो मर गए.
हाँ, नहीं पता तो मर जाते नहीं. व्हाट हैपेंस इज एक्चुअली ये जो सारे जो आई टेल सी व्हाट हैपेंस, किसी भी एक्सीडेंट
एंड यू आर एट द सेंटर,
या किसी भी एक्सीडेंट होता है ना, व्हाट हैपेंस इज देयर इज ऑफ कोर्स द क्राइसिस मैनेजमेंट टीम ऑन ग्राउंड. बहुत सारे लोग होते हैं, टू आई मीन ईच अफेक्टेड फैमिली, बेरीड फैमिली का एक मेंबर, कम से कम वन स्टाफ मेंबर इज डेडिकेटेड फुल टाइम उनके साथ होता है टू हेल्प देम थ्रू द प्रोसेस एंड ऑल दैट. All that is over, I mean, all the cremation, whatever has happened. The problem starts with the claim process. क्योंकि जो claim process होता है of getting the compensation, that is a very elaborate process. A lot of documentation required. And even if you are well educated, it is still not easy to get. It's a very lengthy process. Now, for example, in the case of Mangalore crash, almost, let's say 80% of the people were laborers working in the Gulf. Now their families are not that well educated enough to understand the legal implications and all that. So what happened was a couple of these American lawyers, I think they were basically out of US and some other country. They came and the agents came and got these people to sign wakalatnamas, saying that each of you will get, 1 crore or whatever it is. I mean, you will just sign the wakalatnama, and it may take time, but then whatever it is, we'll take. I mean, we'll take X percentage, and the rest will come to you. But at least 1 crore sabko mil jayega, and all these poor people fell for that, and a lot of them signed. Now, but when the actual insurance compensation started coming, they calculated based on certain listings. So for most of them were getting around 25 to 35 lakhs is the compensation that was coming to that. Now, when from the family's point of view, it's a huge difference. कहाँ 1 crore बोला किसी ने और आप बोलते हैं 35. Now they hold whom responsible? Airline. कि airline ने पैसा देना है. Ultimately, it's not airline. It's the insurance. अब insurance के अंदर क्या होता है? Any insurance this thing, there is a discharge certificate. You have to give a discharge certificate. उसके बाद पैसा नहीं मिलेगा. Check will not be issued to unless you pre-receipt. I mean, not only discharge, pre-receipted. So these poor people were told very clear. Said नहीं आपको people are fooling you. Once you sign on that and give it, पैसा कुछ नहीं आएगा. So there was a huge hue and cry and all that. And we were all going at the wit's end. So finally, I and my finance chief. So then we finally said, okay, I said, एक काम करते हैं, because there is a final date before that. If you don't, then you can't further claim. There's a last date for filing claims. Before that you go to, and that was fast approaching. एक महीने बचा हुआ था. But sir, अभी भी बोलते हैं 50% से लोग ज़्यादा फाइन नहीं किया. Plus somebody wanted to go to the court and all that. I said, ठीक है. So what we decided was, I briefed the media that on Mangalore, that I am going to come to Mangalore, because most of they were staying. I said, I'm going to come to Mangalore on a particular day. I will be available in the Mangalore city office. I said, I will be there available, and they can come and meet me. And when I went there, it again was a very interesting thing, because a lot of security people and all like this. So I saw this. I said, hey, क्या कर रहे तुम लोग यहाँ पे? बोला वो भीड़ आ जाएगा. क्या भीड़? सर आपको मालूम नहीं है ना? I said, nothing doing. I said, I have deliberately come here and I have come at a time when it is after office hours. I said, 4:30 बजे बंद होता है ना ऑफिस. हाँ, I said, no problem. I said, जो भी आएगा उनके पास, I mean, there's an identification, right? बाहर जो outside, check the identification and allow them to come inside. I said, I don't need anybody from security in and around. I sat with them and I told them, I said, see, I said, I speak Malayalam. I said, I speak English, I speak Hindi. And I said, I can understand maybe a little bit of Kannada or anything. I said, whatever questions you have in mind, please feel free to ask. I will give you the answers to the extent possible. And if I can't answer, I will definitely tell you this. I'll give you my phone number. And I say, call me after 2 days. I will respond to all your queries. So the first and foremost, I told them, I said, first of all, I said, you must have trust. I said, you must believe that we are fair and that we are. Otherwise, I said, I wouldn't come.
Correct.
Then उन्होंने पूछा कि सर लेकिन क्या होगा? I mean, I said, इससे कुछ खतरा नहीं है. Please sign the discharge certificate. जो आपको मिलना है वो तो मिलेगा. Court, I said, court has a separate issue. I said, you can all go to the court. I said, just because, I said, your discharge is only for the insurance. All you're saying is insurance से आप further claim नहीं करोगे. Court आपका अलग separate दायरे में है. And touch wood, I think...
yeah, very, very apt and rational and impartial way of, like, you know, जिस हिसाब से आपने handle किया था situation. Beautiful.
And people believed me. People believed me.
सर आपके, I mean, one of the पुराने, मतलब सेकेंड या थर्ड एपिसोड में एक असिस्टेंट कमिश्नर आए थे पुलिस में से, मुंबई पुलिस के. तो उन्होंने वही कहा था, उनसे भी हमने यही सवाल किया था कि जो पोजीशन में वो थे, इंसिडेंट एक्सीडेंट कभी भी हो सकता है, तो इनको कॉल आता ही रहता है. टेकिंग क्यू फ्रॉम देयर, आप वो पोजीशन में थे जहाँ पर आप मीडिया के लिए एक्सेसिबल होना आपका KRA में आ जाता है.
एब्सोल्युटली अनिवार्य है.
हाँ, तो ये अनिवार्य है. करेक्ट. तो एक तो इंडियन मीडिया के हिसाब से, लाइक यू नो, वो आपके टाइमिंग के हिसाब से इट्स ओनली नेचुरल. लेकिन जब आपका रात का टाइम था, तो वो टाइम पे फॉरेन मीडिया का वो दिन का टाइम था. सो दे वुड हैव कॉल्ड यू ड्यूरिंग दैट टाइम. सो मतलब इंडियन मीडिया के लिए भी आप अवेलेबल थे, फॉरेन मीडिया के लिए भी आप अवेलेबल थे. तो वो आपका फैमिली लाइफ या फिर एज अ इंडिविजुअल लाइफ आपका डिस्टर्ब नहीं हुआ कभी?
होता है, बट दैट्स पार्ट ऑफ द जॉब. That's part of the job. I mean, that's what.
नहीं, मतलब अगर आपका नींद नहीं होता है तो you don't become irritated. हाँ, वो हिसाब से
you cannot be irritated. See the point in that's the whole thing.
नहीं, कभी कोई ऐसा इंसिडेंट हुआ है जब कोई मीडिया वाले ने कॉल किया एंड लाइक यू नो you are not in that frame of mind to give a proper, you are also human being at the end of the day.
I have had a couple of experiences wherein
we would love to hear how you handle, because that will be an inspiration to
I had a couple of experiences wherein I mean I got woken up at about, I think 6:45 or something, and I had just gone to sleep at, I mean, maybe I think I had slept at over 3 o'clock. 6:45 there was a call from
3 घंटे का नहीं
foreign media, and I, you know, like, I mean, here the person announced him and said, I'm calling from so and so, you know, news agency, and I'm out of. So I said, I said, yeah, my voice was very, it was very clear from my voice, you know, that it is like नींद से उठ के आया बात कर रहा हूँ. So I said, I know I should be answering your call. However, I said, is it okay if I can call you back an hour later? And I said, it's 6:45 in India, and your time is probably, you know, you are ahead of me, so you're probably, it's noon for you. But can I call you back in an hour? Well, if no, he said, yeah, sure. People respect you. What I'm saying, see, media also understands. Let's look at the other business. See, because journalists also, they also know. They're also human beings. So if you are truthful, they understand that he's not bluffing.
Correct.
But if I lose my temper, how dare you call me now? Then it's going to be on a wrong start.
And you're rubbing media the wrong way. Sir, जब भी कोई आप बता रहे थे कि saying that, you know, you were the spokesperson or you were the face of the एयरलाइंस, जहाँ पर मीडिया को आपको फेस करना था, जहाँ को जो विक्टिम्स है उनके रिलेटिव्स, फैमिलीज को आपको फेस करना था. तो कभी बोलते ना, जो आपका जो मीडिया रूम था